And that is where the trials will take place, while hundreds of Ilians watch from the stands encircling us. The Imperials begin herding us along the path, until we come to a stop beside a wide room jutting out into the pathway, surrounded by thick glass. Peering inside, I can see 3 large and luxurious chairs, all sitting on a polished wood floor and looking so at odds with the gray, cold concrete covering the rest of the bowl. The king's box. So this is where he sits comfortably and watches us die. To my surprise, the Imperials begin pushing us into the glass room, one by one. We all file into a line and watch as Kai strides to the far corner. I crane my neck to see him lift a hidden latch from the floor, swinging open a trap door before jumping down easily. A hand on my shoulder urges me forward. Where are we going? I walk through the stuffy room and make my way to the hole in the floor that awaits me. The room beneath is cast in shadows, making it impossible to see how far down the floor is. I sigh before stepping off the edge and into the darkness. My feet hit the ground with a soft thud. After estimating that the drop was nearly 7 feet, I'm thankful that the ground beneath my sandals is plush. But with the shifting mat beneath me and my bent knees to lessen the impact of the drop, I can't help but stumble forward into something solid. No, not something. Someone. Strong arms wrap around me before I feel the rumble of deep laughter coming from the broad chest I slammed into. Large hands are placed firmly on my hips, and as my eyes adjust to the darkness, I can make out the familiar curve of a smirk on Kai's lips as he looks down on me. Sloppy footwork, Gray. I'd hate to be your partner on the dance floor. I push against his chest with my palms, and he reluctantly releases me, laughing darkly. Well then, the feeling is mutual. I'm flustered, and I hate it. And I have fabulous footwork, thank you very much. I clear my throat, averting my gaze before adding quietly, when fighting. He's right, once again. And once again, I hate it. I am a disastrous dancer. I may be able to dance around in a brawl, but that skill doesn't extend to the ballroom. He laughs again, but before he has the chance to make some sly comment that I would most definitely make him regret, Kit drops down beside me. Toying with your competition, brother? I can hear the amusement in his voice as he walks over to the large lever on the wall and jerks it upward. The lights above us flicker and hum to life, painfully reminding me of home and the few buzzing lamps that scatter Loot Alley. I can't help but toy with the competition that's fun to play with, Kai replies with a sloppy shrug. I'm about to say something I likely shouldn't when our conversation comes to a halt, as the rest of the elites quite literally fall into the room. Looking around, I find the space filled with plushy chairs and couches, along with an assortment of snacks sprawled out onto a long table, making it clear that we are waiting here until the interviews start. Everyone mills about the room, dropping into chairs and grabbing food. I feel a brush of a hand on my shoulder and startle, spinning around to meet a pair of amused honey eyes hiding behind strands of wine-red hair. Jumpy, aren't you? Andy quirks a brow. Yes, well, I thought you were Kai and was preparing to break your nose. She snorts loudly. Understandable. My cousin's an ass. Kinda. She jerks her head towards Kai, but the smile doesn't fade from her face. Your... I blink. Cousin? Yep, he's lucky enough to be related to me. She smirks, her nose ring winking in the dim light. They both are. So you grew up in the palace too, with them? I nod my head towards the boys, who look to be mercilessly teasing Jax. Yeah, unfortunately, she shakes her head and chuckles. The number of fights those two have gotten into over food. She trails off, smiling to herself. Anyways, I'm what they call a handy back at the palace. My dad and I fix anything that needs fixing in the castle, and trust me, those two have broken a lot over the years. Eventually, we find our way to one of the couches and plop down, talking hesitantly. We're polite with each other, content to have a civil conversation while still being very aware of the fact that we are competitors. The thundering sound of hundreds of stomping feet quiets us all. The rumble fills the arena above, making my stomach twist. They're here. Hundreds of aliens, thousands even, all here to watch the interviews, the show, here to choose who they want to support, who they want to live. I'm not sure how long it takes for the parade of footsteps climbing up the rows to quiet, but the voices don't. They chant and cheer, waiting for the contestants to show themselves. The Imperials beckon us back towards the trapdoor, where I suddenly find myself in another line, waiting my turn to pull myself out of the room and back into the glass box above us. I hadn't even noticed the future king beside me until he reaches up to pull something from my hair. I don't even have time to flinch before he's holding a flower in front of my face. The one I had forgotten was tangled in the silver strands. Although I think it suits you, maybe you shouldn't do your interview with this on your head. He gestures to the flower with a smile. You might attract a lot of attention, especially from bees. Play the part. That's what I must keep telling myself, because every time I look at him, all I can see is his father, and a man who will one day rule over a corrupt kingdom. And yet, despite my disgust, I force a smile to my face. Thank you for saving me from both embarrassment and bees. Braxton steps beneath the exit, and I'm thankful for the excuse to look away from the future king. The brawny doesn't even need to jump to grab hold of the lip before easily pulling himself off the floor and through the trapdoor. One by one, the boys help themselves up into the room above, until only the two princes remain. They help the girls up with ease, practically lifting Hera through the opening. Blair takes advantage of the situation, using it as an excuse to have the boys' hands all over her. After Sadie politely asks for a boost, I'm left alone with the brothers. I look up through the trapdoor, assessing my jump, when Kai steps behind me, ducking his head so his chin nearly rests on my shoulder. Too stubborn to ask for my help, Gray? No, I say coolly. Too strong to need it. His next words are murmured close to my ear. That's what I like to hear. The heat of him vanishes when he steps to the side, gesturing to the trapdoor above with a smile twisting his lips. I jump, my fingers curling around the edge of the opening as I dangle in the air for a moment. I've never been more grateful for the many years I've had to practice scaling buildings. I pull myself up, ready to swing my legs over. This damn dress, I huff. It's stiff, the fabric hugging my hips, making it impossible to move freely. Go on. It's Kai's taunting voice I hear behind me. Ask for my help, Gray. I roll my eyes at the wall in front of me. Stubborn, remember? I hear Kit chuckle before I feel hands brushing my legs. Startled, I look down, eyes landing on a bent head of messy black waves. Kai is gripping the bottom seam of my dress, his eyes flicking up to mine. May I? His voice is soft, tone amused. I swallow, roll my eyes once again, and nod against my better judgment. And then he's ripping my dress. He tears the fabric easily, creating a slit up the side of my thigh, freeing me from the tight confines of the fabric. His rough fingers briefly brush my skin as he says, I am more than willing to rip your dresses for you, Gray. To help, of course. Kit snorts while Kai smirks. You only need to ask. Why ask when you're so eager to offer? Kai's laughter follows me as I finally pull myself up, arms burning with the strain. When I stand to my feet inside the glass box, I'm relieved to find the chairs are still empty. The thought of seeing the king, after the way he so flippantly spoke about my father, as if he wasn't his murderer, makes my blood boil. Before that dinner, I'd never had to fight the urge to shove a fork through someone's jugular. I take a deep breath before stepping out onto the pathway. The crowd roars. Here we are. The Imperials lead us to a small opening in the railing opposite the box, where stairs have been placed for us to get into the pit below. My feet hit the hard sand of the arena as the crowd cheers, sounding as though the trials have already begun. We walk across the large floor of the pit, stopping in the middle where a makeshift stage rises a few feet off the ground. 10 plush chairs line the back of it, while 2 more are centered in front. The Imperials usher us onto the stage where we take a seat. My gaze catches Lenny's, and he gives me a reassuring nod before stepping into line with the other Imperials.
Welcome, fellow Ilians, to the 6th ever Purging Trials.
The crowd roars as I snap my head towards the high female voice. She turns to face us, brown eyes bright with excitement and full red lips curved into a smile as she takes us in. Tiala. Ironic that her bright teal hair matches her name. I'd never seen the young woman who conducted the interviews for the previous trials, but I've heard enough about her unique appearance to identify her.
Oh, but this is no ordinary trials,
she beams at the crowd, flashing her white teeth.
For the first time in Purging Trials history, we have a future enforcer competing.
I can almost feel the thousands of eyes shift in Kai's direction. He's clearly used to this attention, appearing completely relaxed as he reclines in his chair. Tiala continues.
And because of that, this year's trials will look a little different.
The crowd goes wild. Ellie's words echo in my head, mirroring the ones Tiala just spoke. Different. All because there is royal blood competing? All to make things more difficult for the future enforcer? I don't have time to ponder it more before Tiala says,
Are you ready to meet your elites?
She flattens her hand to her chest as she speaks, causing her words to carry across the arena. Her ability as an amplifier allows her to project her voice, as well as the voices of others, so long as she is touching them. A mundane power, yet useful in this line of work. The crowd cheers and stomps, mimicking the rumble of thunder.
Why don't we meet Jax first? Jax, sweetie, would you come sit up here with me?
Jax plops down in the chair angled towards Tiala at the front of the stage with a shy smile on his face. He fidgets, one of his long legs bouncing on the ground as she pelts him with idle questions about his life and the trials.
I like sparring with Kit, mostly because he lets me win sometimes. Kai, not so much.
The crowd erupts in laughter at Jax's response to what he likes most about training for the trials. He smiles sheepishly at Tiala, his grin widening when he shifts in his seat to spot Kai's quick shrug.
Isn't he just adorable?
Tiala flashes a smile at the crowd before asking,
Tell me, Jax, how old are you again?
Tiala's hand rests on his shoulder, amplifying his answer.
15.
Plagues, he's so young.
15, and already bestowed the honor of competing in the trials,
Tiala exclaims, looking towards the crowd for approval, which they offer in the form of stomps and cheers.
And remind us again of your power.
He clears his throat.
I'm a blink. How fascinating! Tell us more for those who haven't witnessed this ability.
Well, he straightens in his seat.
I can teleport anywhere that I can see in a blink.
He smiles as the audience laughs.
All right, Jax, one more question before you show us what you can do.
Tiala looks suddenly serious as she says,
What are you expecting from the trials?
Jax's head tilts to the side thoughtfully.
Well, I'm not sure what the trials would consist of, but no matter what, I'm expecting to honor my kingdom, my family.
He pauses and tosses a glance at Kai.
And myself.
The stadium explodes in applause at hearing the motto of the Purging Trials. Tiala stands and guides Jax down the steps of the stage and onto the packed sand of the pit in front of us.
The floor is all yours, Jax.
1 second, Jax is grinning at the audience, and the next, he's gone. I spin in my seat to see where he went, only to find him standing right behind Kai, a mischievous grin on his face. He ruffles his hair before vanishing, leaving the prince sputtering. Jax continues his little routine, blinking from one spot to the next, causing the crowd to gasp in surprise at each new place he appears in. After a few minutes, he blinks back to his original seat, right between Kai and Braxton, where the former doesn't hesitate to trap him in a headlock and mercilessly ruffle his hair. Tiala continues her own routine of questioning the contestants before letting them loose to show off their abilities, following the same pattern. It's nothing but a talent show. A showcase of who is the strongest. Braxton smashes and hurdles stone statues that have been scattered across the stadium for him. After Ace's interview, where he spoke as though he'd already won the trials, he strode down into the pit, pompous as ever. The illusions he casts look so real, so easy to mistake for reality. He made fire flare, burning across the sand in a trail of flame, managing to even smell of smoke. And then it was gone in a flash as quickly as it had appeared, leaving nothing behind. Sadie, being a cloner, displayed her power by creating 10 copies of herself and striding them through the stands. Each duplicate offered quick waves to the crowd before filing back to her seat. Blair followed Sadie's interview, being annoyingly sweet towards Tiala and the crowd, though I don't miss the sharpness returned to her voice when talking about winning the trials. She stepped out onto the packed sand and gently lifted Tiala right off the ground, using her power of telekinesis, informing me that her strength lies mentally rather than physically. In fact, the blade that sliced my ear only yesterday was likely thrown by her power, not her hand. Hera was shy, squirming in her seat and only talking when necessary. I could practically see her sigh in relief when she was finally free to show off her ability and avoid talking to the audience. She vanishes, and after a moment, Tiala vanishes too. The crowd applauds, left staring at the empty air where they once stood. Andy was the most entertaining by far, unashamedly telling embarrassing stories about her childhood with Kit and Kai. The crowd loved her, laughed at her every word. But when she stepped out onto the floor of the pit to display her power, my gasp was swallowed up by the crowds. Right before my very eyes, she transformed into a tiger, then a falcon, a wolf, all of them the same wine color of her hair. And then, after casually switching between multiple animals, she transformed back into her human self, her lilac dress somehow still perfectly intact. Tiala chooses Kai next, leaving me for last. Great. With Kai smiling at her, Tiala looks flushed and flustered. It's clear he's slipped on his charming mask as he jokes and interacts with the crowd. When Tiala asks him about what he's expecting from the trials, his answer is the same as all the other contestants before him. Honor my kingdom, my family, and myself. When the prince finally finishes, he flashes a grin at the blushing Tiala before stepping right off the stage to showcase his power. Well, everyone else's powers. He goes right down the line of contestants, using each of their abilities and wooing the audience with them. Their powers seem easy to him, familiar, the result of many years of training. When he comes to the end of the row, his eyes meet mine. His head cocks slightly to the side as he takes me in, gray gaze wandering over my face. I can't imagine how much it must rattle him to not be able to use my ability, and the thought brings a small smile to my lips as I look down at him. Then Kai is back in his chair, and I'm striding towards my doom.
And lastly, we have Peyton Gray.
Tiala's voice echoes through the arena as she pats the seat beside her expectantly. Play the part. Chapter 15. Peyton. My palms are slick with sweat. I sit down in the seat beside Tiala and smooth out the skirt of my dress, if only for an excuse to wipe my sweaty hands on the smooth silk. I look up into the audience, and my breath catches. I'm embarrassed that I hadn't observed them before, but now I can't seem to tear my eyes away. The king and queen and Kit. They stare down at me from their snug glass box. The king and his heir sit close together, their similarities striking me like a blow to the chest. Their sandy hair and emerald eyes mirror one another, looking so alike that my hatred for one begins to bleed into the other.
So, Peyton, tell us about your incident with Prince Kai.
My eyes trail back to Tiala's, nearly blinded by her gleaming white teeth and vibrant hair. She leans towards me and places a soft hand on my shoulder, projecting my voice for all to hear.
Well, according to Prince Kai, there's not much to tell. But if you ask me, I think he's a little embarrassed that a girl from the slums had to come to his rescue.
The words tumble out of my mouth before I can stop them. Plagues. I need the people to like me, and mocking their prince is probably not the best way to... Laughter. To my surprise, and saving grace, the audience finds me amusing. I peek over my shoulder at Kai and watch the ghost of a smile grace his features. So maybe I can bash their prince after all. I can work with that.
Not afraid to tell it like it is.
Tiala laughs softly before moving on to the next question, the one I'm sure many are wondering.
So, tell us again how it is that you were able to fight off the silencer. I mean, it's clear you can hold your own in a physical fight, but how come the silencer didn't affect you?
I take a deep breath, knowing that this detail is very important for everyone to understand, to believe. Well, Tiala, I'm a psychic. It's a mental ability that allows me to sense strong emotions from others and get flashes of information. And because of that, I have the power to guard my head, keep it safe from people like the silencers. I smile slightly before adding, and apparently people like Prince Kai, since he can't use or sense my small ability.
How fascinating! I must say, I've never met a psychic before.
Her eyes are wide, looking very intrigued with me, as I'm sure the rest of the crowd is. Yes, well, despite it being a mundane ability, it does seem to be quite rare. I smile brightly, as if I'm not lying through the teeth I'm flashing at her.
All right, Peyton, tell us about your life in the...
She stutters, almost saying slums before choosing to say,
in Ilya.
I contemplate lying some more, saying how it wasn't that bad, how it was easy living in the slums. But it seems I suddenly have the urge to be honest.
You mean life in the slums?
She blinks at me, surprised by my blunt correction. There's not much to tell. Life on the streets isn't much of a life at all. I look her right in the eyes before turning to face the hushed crowd. These past few years, hunger and cold have been the only constant in my life. But it's not just me. There are dozens of others who sleep on the same hard cobblestone I did. Dozens of others who will do anything for a single shilling. I pause and take a breath. Living in the slums is survival of the fittest. So, in a way, I'm more prepared for these trials than anyone. Tiala stares at me in shock, clearly not expecting that answer. Then something like pity gleams in her brown eyes. I hate it. I don't want her or the crowd's pity. I want change. She quickly moves on to more lighthearted questions about training and my fellow contestants.
Who do you think will be your biggest competition?
I tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, contemplating my answer.
Perhaps Prince Kai, seeing that he has the ability to use any power?
Tiala offers.
Not mine, remember?
I laugh lightly, and so does she. He won't be a problem. In fact, we'll see how far he makes it in these trials without me there to save him. I smile sweetly as the crowd roars with laughter, practically feeling Kai's eyes burning a hole into the back of my head.
All right, Peyton, last question. What do you expect to get out of these trials?
My mouth opens, intending to spew out the practiced motto of the purging trials like everyone else had. Like I'm supposed to do. but when my eyes lock on the glass box above me, lock on the current and expected king, words fall out of my mouth before I can bite my tongue. The wrong words. Survival. I expect to survive this. I can feel thousands of eyes pinned on me. Tiala manages a slow blink while wisps of teal hair blow across her face in the soft breeze. Finally, she clears her throat and stands stiffly to guide me down the stage.
All right then,
she tries to act natural as she says,
"Show us what you can do."
Now I'm blinking at her. How the hell am I supposed to do that? I look around the stadium as I say, "Why don't you choose a random person from the crowd and I'll read them." What the plagues am I talking about? Tiala smiles and nods, clearly happy to go do something. I watch as she climbs the steps out of the pit and begins walking down the rows of people, smiling and waving as she goes. After a few minutes of contemplation, she finally points to a young girl, seated a few rows above. The poor girl looks concerningly confused, but cautiously stands before making her way down into the pit, guided by Tiala. When she approaches me warily, I realize she can't be much older than I am. Her short brown hair, paired with the freckles splattering her face, grant her a constant look of innocence. I smile and reach out to take her hands, wanting to make a show of this. "Don't worry, I won't bite," I say softly when she takes a slight step back. I offer her what I hope is a warm smile, and with that, she slowly holds her tan hands out to me. Grasping them gently in my own, I quickly observe her before squeezing my eyes shut. I have everything I need. I think of the tarnished chain around her neck, paired with the faded large ring hanging from it that was just barely visible behind the folds of her shirt. I'd kept my father's ring after he died too, only I wear mine on my thumb. I'm sensing grief. I squeeze her warm hands, taking a deep breath. You lost a man that was very close to you, a while ago. Your father? I open my eyes to see her mouth hanging open. Yes, she says quietly, even with Tiala's hand on her shoulder to amplify her voice. Yes, he died 4 years ago. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know what it's like to lose a father. I keep my eyes locked on hers, though I desperately want to glare up at the king in his shiny box. A collective gasp echoes through the crowd, amazed that I could know such a personal detail. And they want more. Tiala selects person after person to come down into the pit, each one more excited to be read than the last. I spout random and personal things about them, things that a stranger shouldn't know. You just found out you're pregnant. Your father is a blacksmith. You stole the shoes you're wearing. Every time, both the person I read and the crowd above us are in awe. They gasp, clap, and cheer, a completely captivated audience. Plagues, if I knew people liked this so much, I would have charged for readings on the street. A lanky young man now stands before me, a grin lighting up his face as he stares down expectantly. Closing my eyes, I recall the faint ring of dirt clinging to the right knee of his pants as he walked towards me. That, combined with the subtle outline of a small box in his coat pocket and the happy glow on his face, means I come to my conclusion in a matter of seconds. I'm sensing joy because I release one of his hands to press my fingers to my temple. You just got engaged. Today. I open my eyes just in time to see his mouth fall open. Yes, she's right. I just proposed less than 2 hours ago. He spins to face the crowd, a wide smile on his face as the audience grows wild. Congratulations! My shout is swallowed by the cheering crowd as he practically skips up the stairs to return to his seat. With that, I spin on my heel and head back to my chair, not waiting for another person to come striding down for me to read. Here! Tiala sweeps an arm behind her, gesturing to us.
are your contestants for the 6th ever purging trials.
Her voice echoes across the stadium, only to be quickly drowned out by the crowd. The contestants around me stand, and I do the same. We wave and smile at the crowd, watching as they chant, stomp, and pump their fists in the air. I feel sick. I feel used. This is all a game to them. But if I want to stay alive, I have to play my part. I have to play them. Being a pawn in their game is the price I have to pay to survive. Make them believe I like this, and in turn, they will like me. So I straighten, holding my head a little higher as I smile a little brighter. I am no one's pawn.
Chapter 16. Kai. Blood clings to my hands, my clothes, staining everything a sickening red. Torturing tends to be a messy occupation, and despite how many years of practice I've had, it never seems to get any easier or cleaner. Unlike Kit, who has been training since childhood to be poised, just, and kingly, my training has consisted of more hands-on work. Battle strategies, assassinations, and the art of torture made up much of my education, and due to this unique and extensive training I've received, I'm very good at what I do. Except, it seems, when it comes to the silencer, cowering on the dungeon floor before me. It's been days. I've beaten this man to a bloody pulp. And what have I learned in return? Nothing. To say that I'm pissed would be an understatement. The only useful word I've gotten him to slip past his lips, besides the splitting screams and pleas, is what I'm assuming is his name. Micah. I sigh, crouching down to hover over his broken, bloody body. His long hair, matted with blood, falls into his deep, brown eyes. They widen when they meet mine, making him look so young. He can't be more than a few years my senior. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I say, deceptively soft, but I don't believe you're mute. I grab his jaw and pry it open to reveal the blood pooling in his mouth, over his tongue, staining his teeth scarlet. But I could easily make that happen. I could carve out your tongue. I drop his head to the stone floor and stand to leave, aware that I'm already late for dinner. Slamming the door to the cell behind me, I offer Damien a curt nod. He gives me a slow bow of his head in return, before following me down the long hallway of cells. Our footsteps echo off the stone walls as we make our way up the stairs and into the bright, sun-filled hallway above the dungeons. I deftly head to the throne room, even while my mind wanders. The trials are quickly approaching with only 4 days separating us from the first deadly game. These past few days have followed the same routine of training, eating, talking, and torturing. And, well, toying with Peyton. She's been my main source of entertainment as of late. She's entertaining. With her wit and stubbornness and obvious annoyance with me. Stop. I push thoughts of Peyton from my mind as I stride through the large doors of the throne room. My hands find their way to my pockets. Casual, despite how very aware I am that my navy shirt splotched with blood does not quite fit the dress code for dinner. The servants have already brought food to the table, which everyone sitting around it is greedily enjoying. Heads turn when they hear my shoes on the polished floor, several pairs of eyes flicking from my face to the blood clinging onto my clothes. I ignore their stares, seeing that I was too tired to change and too hungry to care. Guy, glad you could make it. Father sounds peeved, per usual, as I take my seat. Honey, Mother says quietly, leaning towards me, you look a little, well, bloody. She cringes as her eyes roam over me, assessing her son. Occupational hazard, Mother. I give her a small smile, the sweet one I reserve for only her. She nods hesitantly before trying to relax back into her chair. I barely listen to the quiet chatter carrying on around me. I'm finishing the last of my beans when an incessant tapping has me looking up. Strands of Peyton's silver hair fall around her face in loose curls, the rest of it tied back into a messy knot at the nape of her neck. Her eyes are pinned to her plate, her thumb and silver ring tapping a steady beat against the wooden table. And then those ocean eyes slide up to mine. I tip my head towards her drumming thumb. "Is there something on your mind, Gray?" She looks me over as if noticing my presence for the first time. "Is there something on your shirt, Azur?" Her eyes skim over my clothes before widening slightly. "Is that blood?" I'm sure I imagine the flash of worry on her face, the look of concern when she thinks it may be my own blood staining the shirt. "Careful, darling. You almost look as if you care." I give her a lazy smile, and she gives me a lazy eye roll. My gaze snaps to Mother when her gentle voice cuts through my thoughts. "I hope you all have begun pairing up for the first ball." I glance around the table. Only the three who haven't previously lived in the castle look slightly confused. Hera, Ace, and Peyton haven't grown up watching these balls, haven't even been to a ball. I envy them. "As is tradition," Mother continues, "the contestants will partner up for the balls that are held before each trial. And since there is an odd number of you, whoever does not have a partner will be paired with someone. Don't worry." Her smile somehow grows wider as she says, "So choose your date and get practicing your dance steps." Kit shifts beside me, and I see him quickly glance in Peyton's direction. I run a hand through my hair before turning my attention back on my food, needing to focus on something. Since the girls outnumber the boys, it's likely that Kit will be paired with whoever doesn't have a partner, but that won't stop him from asking one of them if he wishes to. It's clear that Peyton intrigues him, but even if Kit wasn't going to ask Peyton to accompany him to the ball, which I don't doubt he will, she doesn't want me. I like a challenge, but she's made it abundantly clear on what she wishes us to be: competition, enemies. And more importantly, why isn't that what I want as well? I wake the next morning, drenched in sweat. This isn't uncommon, not with the nightmares that tend to haunt my sleep. But today is different. Today it is bloody boiling outside. It's only dawn, and my room is already sticky with humidity. I roll out of bed and make my way to the bathroom where I splash cool water over my already damp face. It doesn't take me long to get ready, begrudgingly pulling on a white cotton shirt before slipping out the door and there she is. She steps out of her room with her head down, quietly shutting the door before looking up and practically jumping at the sight of me. "Plagues, Kai. Don't scare me like that." I blink. It's the first time she's called me by my name, and I realize then that I could get used to the sound of it rolling off her tongue. She seems to notice what she said and clears her throat before beginning to walk down the hallway. "Aren't you up early for a prince?" She calls over her shoulder. "What? No breakfast in bed?" I catch up to her easily, taking about 3 strides before I'm walking beside her. "If you're not getting breakfast in bed, neither am I. I'm just a regular contestant. Remember? No longer a charming prince for the time being." "You were never that to begin with." I chuckle as we turn the corner, spotting the kitchen looming just ahead. The smell of biscuits and eggs wafting from within is enough to make me change course. "So," Peyton begins, probably the start of some snide comment that I'll never get the pleasure of hearing because I grab her wrist and tug her towards the kitchen doors. I'm sure she is just as hungry as I am, and breakfast won't be served for nearly another hour. I'm doing us both a favor. Apparently, Peyton doesn't share my sentiment. Her feet dig into the floor at the threshold of the kitchen doors, eyes darting between mine. "What are you—" she starts, giving me that murderous look I've already grown so familiar with. Shh. I press my finger to her lips lightly, and the words die in her throat. I suppose my job will forever be feeding you now. Gray? Her flustered expression has me laughing quietly before I hear the scuff of shoes, reluctantly drawing my gaze from her wide-eyed one. We've drawn quite the crowd. Several servants stand staring at us, taking in the scene before them, but they scuttle away swiftly, snickering as they try to make themselves look busy. "Hello, ladies," I call, looking around the room at the blushing servants. "I've brought a far more interesting guest today than Kit." I place a gentle hand on the small of Peyton's back, prodding her forward. It's a question, a tentative test, an innocent inquiry. Is this okay? I briefly wonder if she's considering breaking my wrist, maybe contemplating placing a dagger to my throat. And then she relaxes, easing into my touch, an answer to my question without uttering a word. Yes. I guide her towards the center of the kitchen where I've spotted Gail, currently hunched over the stove. "Morning, Gail." She spins around, her face lighting up when she sees me. "You look lovely as always." My mouth quirks as I hop up onto the counter and sit beside where she flips crispy pieces of bacon over the stove. "You're such a kiss-ass, Kai," she teases, lightly whipping a towel in my direction. Her eyes land on Peyton, and she straightens, nodding curtly. "Ah, Miss Peyton. A pleasure." "Please," Peyton sighs with a small smile. "No, miss. Just Peyton." I can practically see Gail relax, probably thinking the plague that formalities aren't needed. "Now, what is a sweet girl like you doing hanging around riffraff like him?" Gail jabs a thumb in my direction while I snatch a strip of bacon from the pan behind her turned back. I let out a low laugh. "Oh, sweet isn't the word I would use to describe her, Gail. She held a knife to my throat only a few days ago." "He deserved it," Peyton says simply, shrugging slightly. "Oh, I'm sure he did," Gail replies, grinning at her. "I probably would have done the same." She glances at me, nodding towards Peyton. "I like this one." Peyton tips her head back and laughs. My body goes still as I listen to the sound of it fill the kitchen. So warm, so bright. Then, too quickly, she collects herself, clears her throat, and turns towards me. "So, you and Kit are close with Gail?" My head tilts to the side as I peer down at her, my eyes never straying from hers as I say, "Inseparable, aren't we, Gail?" A loud snort escapes the cook. "Inseparable indeed. The princes won't leave me alone." Her eyes sparkle with pride when they meet mine. "I'm the only reason the two of them aren't stick thin." "Ah, yes," I sigh. "We have Gail's sticky buns to thank for fattening us up." After Gail gladly informed Peyton of some rather embarrassing stories from my childhood, we talk casually, a regular routine for the cook and me. I ask about her son, stationed as a guard near the Scorches, all while sneaking bits of food as she swats at my hands. My gaze snags on Peyton, from where she watches me curiously, as though trying to puzzle me out. Funny. Normally, I'm the one giving her that look. I jump off the counter and give Gail a peck on the cheek. "Hey, don't miss me too much." Then I turn towards Peyton, who's leaning casually against the counter, a small smile tugging at her lips. I take a slow step towards her. Her head tips up to look me in the eyes as I close the distance between us. So close I can smell the lingering scent of lavender on her skin. I reach around her back, fingers brushing her tank. Her breath hitches and I feel my lips tug upward. When she opens her mouth to tell me off, I pull my hand back slowly, holding an apple in front of her face. "Always feeding you. Remember?" She stares at the fruit before snatching it from my hand, huffing in annoyance. And then she smiles, the dazzling action lighting up her face as she rubs the apple on my shirt, right above my heart. She takes a bite, her eyes locked with mine. "And you said you weren't a gentleman." By the time we make it to the training grounds, I'm slicked with sweat once again. Almost in unison, several of us peel off our shirts, unable to bear the heat any longer. Kit and I set off jogging around the grounds at an easy pace. I watch as the contestants pair off to spar or go their separate ways to train. Andy is currently in the form of a red leopard, circling several Sadies in one of the dirt training rings. Unsurprisingly, Braxton is on the ground doing push-ups, while Jax occupies himself by throwing rocks as far as he can, only to blink and catch them before they hit the ground. Finally, my traitorous eyes slide towards a flash of silver hair. She's beating on that padded tree, per usual. She always does this. Her movements are quick, controlled, channeling an emotion I can't place. She spins suddenly, her arm raised before I see her wrist flick. I blink, and a knife sinks deep into a tree 10 yards away. Practiced, purposeful, precise. But I'm not the only one watching. Kit's gaze is locked on her, almost curiously. I clear my throat and pick up our pace. So, how you feeling? Kit's head whips towards me. At the moment, tired. I laugh at that, hitting him lightly in the stomach. Yeah, you're getting out of shape, Kitty. He shoves me at the mention of his childhood nickname. Well, I don't exactly have a reason I need to be in shape, do I? Though he says this jokingly, I don't miss the bitter edge in his voice. I sigh, already knowing what this is about. You know why you can't. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like hell you don't, I mutter. Kit, you're the next king of Ilia. We need you alive. The trials are no place for you. Shit. As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew they'd struck him like a physical blow. Is my own kingdom no place for me either? His laugh holds no humor. Hell, is anywhere outside of the castle not safe enough for the air? Kit, I know. He cuts me off, taking a deep breath. I know our duties are different. They always will be. I just wish mine weren't so damn boring. With that, he shoots me a weak smile in an effort to lighten the mood. I watch him, waiting to see if he'll say what we both know he wants to, wanting to see if he'll tell me that he feels trapped, that he feels like he's constantly trying to prove himself, that he wishes he were in the trials so he could do just that. But he says nothing of the sort. His smile, a silent plea to return to just being brothers, and not the future king and his enforcer. So, for him, I force a grin onto my face. Well, at least I can count on your vote in the trials. The tension seems to melt from Kit's body, his smile displaying his emotion like it always has. He sighs in relief at the change in topic before saying, Oh, I don't know that you can count on my vote after you all but called me fat a few minutes ago. Kai Pai. I hate that nickname, and the asshole knows it. So, I stick out my foot, sending Ilya's next king sprawling to the ground before he drags me with him. We finish off our laps, dripping in sweat as the sun beats down on us. I stretch quickly before heading into the ring with Kit. We dance around each other, using both our powers and bodies to fight. Falling into a familiar rhythm, I let myself mull over what Kit had said, losing myself in my thoughts. The world flips. No, I flip. And then I'm sprawled on my back, trying to suck air into my screaming lungs. Damn it. Lost my focus. Got you on the ground, Kai? Kit smiles down at me. Been a few years since that last happened, huh? I can tell he's about to continue gloating, so I don't give him the chance. My leg sweeps out, catching his ankles and sending him sprawling to the ground beside me. Don't get used to it, I say, resting my head on the ground and smiling up at the sky. Once he catches his breath, he's barking out a laugh. I should have seen that coming. He trails off as I reluctantly stand to my feet and lazily brush the dirt from my clothes before offering a hand to him. We go our separate ways, Kit to spar with an insisting blare, while I head to the targets. I grab the thin knives from the rack beside me and flip one in my hand before flipping it through the air. Weapons, fighting. killing. This is what I was raised to do. This is why I'll be the enforcer and the one fighting in the trials, not Kit. I hear the pounding of fists and quiet panning a few yards to my left, where the padded trees border the training grounds. She's back at it. Once again, she's hammering blows into the tree. Or maybe she simply never stopped in the first place. She looks frustrated, angry, sloppy. Her punches are weaker, her form far less controlled. She's tired, and her stance is suffering because of it. I mindlessly flip a knife in my hand, shaking my head at the sky for what I'm about to do. I send my blade cutting through the air towards the target before strolling over to her, coming from behind while she continues to strike the pads. I'm standing at her back now, and she pivots in one swift move, sending an elbow flying towards my face. I barely have enough time to dodge before gripping her arm, halting it in the air. Her head whips around, strands of silver hair sticking to her face, now slick with sweat. My lips twitch into a smile. You should keep practicing before you try to hit me. She snorts. In case you've forgotten, I saved you. I know how to fight. I don't need to try to hit you, Prince. She tugs her arm out of my grip and turns back towards the tree, intently ignoring me. Well, that just won't do. With that form, you will need to try, Gray. Oh, really? I can't tell if she's amused or contemplating trying to hit me at this very moment. Maybe both. Yes, really. You're sloppy. It's not like you, I state, making her scoff. Once again, she turns back to the tree and begins throwing more punches, decidedly done with our conversation. Her knuckles are red, raw, and nearly bleeding. Why does she do this to herself? I shake my head, already knowing the answer. Because I've done it before. I've hit pads, walls, anything until blood dripped from my fists, all to find a release for the anger, the frustration that was pent up inside me. And that is exactly what Peyton is doing. She's still swinging too much with her arms, rather than using her whole body as momentum. She's typically very technical when it comes to fighting, making this especially unlike her. But she's tired and frustrated. And despite me knowing all this, I can't fight the urge to toy with her. I step even closer to her back and place my hands on her hips, twisting her body as she throws another punch. She jumps and stumbles into me, her head tipping back against my bare chest. Stop swinging with your arms and swing with your whole body, I say, bending my head so I'm close to her ear. She sucks in a breath when my hands sweep over her abdomen, the whisper of my fingers dancing along her thin tank. Engage your core, Gray. Her chest heaves. Then she takes a step forward, the heat of her body leaving mine. My hands are still planted on her hips when she turns her head to shoot me an irritated look. She knows I'm right, and she hates it. She got lazy and didn't realize until now, too focused and frustrated to notice. The thought has me smiling down at her as she huffs, blowing a strand of hair out of her eyes before turning back towards the tree. Now, throw a punch, I murmur, leaning in to add, correctly. Shockingly, she doesn't argue, likely realizing it won't do her any good. She squares her shoulders and balances on the balls of her feet. Then she jabs, her fist flying towards the mat as I twist her hips in time with the punch. There's far more momentum behind it. I can see how much stronger she's gotten in her short time here with her consistent meals and training. When her knuckles sink into the pad, the lean muscles in her back and arms are evident. Much better, I say dully, despite being impressed. After a moment that was most definitely too long, I finally drop my hands from her hips. Now, do it on your own, just to make sure you were paying attention. She stills, facing the tree, and then there's a flash of silver hair as she swivels around, throwing a beautiful jab at my face. Chapter 17. Kai. I almost don't dodge in time, Only years of fighting allow my reflexes to react so quickly. "How was that?" she says sweetly, flashing that startling smile at me. I huff out a laugh. What if I didn't duck, Gray? "I knew you'd duck, Azur." She's close to my face now, a wicked smile curving her lips when she repeats the exact phrase I told her after throwing a knife in her direction. Looks like someone is itching for a fight. My eyes flick up her body, taking my time, taking in her stance and the balls of her feet, her slightly raised hands, and every stitch of clothing clinging to her body in between. "I've just been waiting for an excuse to punch that smirk off your face." She swings at me again, knowing I'll duck under it. She's toying with me. Wouldn't be the first time someone said that to me, I say as we circle each other. We've backed into a small opening between the targets and the weapons rack opposite them. I show her my palms, surrendering before the fight has even begun. "You don't really want to do this, and neither do I. Especially because I wouldn't want to mess up that pretty face of yours, darling." She all but rolls her eyes at me. "That's funny, because I won't hesitate to mess up your pretty face." I smirk. "I knew you thought I was pretty." At that, she throws another punch at my face that I easily evade. We continue circling each other, slowly. Damp hair clings to my forehead, and I comb my fingers through it, pushing it off my sticky skin. "You do know that I have 8 powers at my disposal right now, and any one of them could drop you." I grin as I say it, watching her eyes narrow. "I don't want to fight your power. I want to fight you. Just you." Her piercing gaze never leaves mine as she says it, even as the other elites turn their attention towards us, finding this fight far more interesting than their training. "So, you want just me? No powers?" "Yes, I just want you." She breathes, annoyed with me. My mouth twists into a crooked grin. "I knew you wanted me, Gray." And with that little comment, a high kick comes flying towards my face. I block it with my hands and push her leg down, once again surprised by her strength. Before I can take another breath, a beautiful jab heads for my face, this one intended to meet its mark. Hard. I duck under it before grabbing her outstretched wrist and pulling her back against my chest as I twist her arm under her shoulder blade. "You're gonna have to do better than that, Gray," I whisper against her ear, smiling. She grunts and drives the elbow of her free arm into my stomach. The air whooshes out of my lungs, and she takes advantage of it. Pivoting, she swings her elbow high at my face, making my head snap to the side when it connects with my jaw. My grip on her arm loosens, and she spins out of my hold before throwing a right cross at the exact same spot on my jaw. Damn. I keep my head turned to the side, my tongue roaming over the inside of my cheek as my mouth begins to fill with blood. And then my gaze slowly slides to her. She's on the balls of her feet, hands still raised in a fighting stance as she stares at me. And then she smiles, momentarily distracting me. I laugh, deep and quiet, before spitting blood onto the ground. "Much better, Gray." I smile as I circle her, my fist instinctively raised. "I might actually need to fight back." Her smile slips before she's suddenly dropping to the ground and sweeping her leg in a wide arc, intending to knock me to the dirt. I jump over it swiftly, but she's back on her feet in a split second, throwing a combination of punches. She peppers me with a series of uppercuts, jabs, and hooks, but I stay on defense, blocking her fists. With her quick movements, she finally gets in a sharp blow to my stomach, stealing my breath away. Fine. If she wants to fight, I'll fight. It won't hurt her. Badly. In fact, she's quite skilled, and despite my mocking, she is a fine fighter. But with my now bruising jaw and stomach, I'm done playing games. She ducks before my fist meets the air where her head was. Then she kicks out a leg, swinging it towards my ribs. I grab her ankle right before it connects with my side and yank her forward. She stumbles towards me, and I grip her thigh against my side with one hand, while the other lands a blow to her cheekbone. It was a softer hit, but still hard enough to make her head snap to the side. I let go of her leg at the same moment I wrap my foot behind her ankle, still planted on the ground, giving it a good tug. She falls, hard. Violent coughs shake her body as soon as her back hits the dirt as she tries to suck air back into her lungs. I hover over her with a smile, assuming the match is over. Wrong. She kicks me in the groin. Hard. I double over, huffing out a pained laugh. Cheap shot, darling. Yes, but an effective one. She jumps to her feet, panting even with a sly smile. Her hands are up, covering her face, while the rest of her body is covered in dirt. And then we are trading off blows and blocks as we toy with one another. It's like a dance, and she is a fierce partner. But, for whatever reason, I refuse to throw my whole weight behind the punches. I rein myself in. Not enough to stop me from fighting back, but enough to keep her mostly unbroken. Though she is clearly not doing the same. She's hitting hard, striking relentlessly, wanting to hurt me. 1 minute we're flirting, and the next we're fighting, possibly even both at the same time. I can't seem to figure this vicious girl out. After minutes of blocking and landing blows, we are both panting in the unbearable heat. Sweat rolls down my brow and stings my eyes as the group surrounding us cheers and grunts each time one of us takes a hit. I strike her with a combination of punches, my uppercut finding its mark under her jaw and jerking her head up. I follow it with a lazy jab which she dodges, grabbing my outstretched arm in one hand and my opposite shoulder in the other. Then she steps close to me, driving a knee into my stomach. But she's left the arm that is holding my shoulder open and exposed, so I take advantage of it. I use both hands to grab hold of her forearm and wrist before pivoting so my back is against her chest. Then I use my momentum to raise her off the ground, throwing her over my shoulder and onto the dirt with a thud. She's on her back, wheezing from the impact of the hard ground as I stare down at her, hoping she's finally given up. Wrong again. With surprising speed, she grips the back of my ankles with her hands and yanks with that strength of hers. Caught off guard, she manages to pull my feet from under me, sending the ground flying towards my back. She's up and on me in a second, practically jumping on top of my chest, placing her knees on either side of me. And then she cocks a bloody fist back, her smile triumphant. I take her in, bloody and straddling me. If it weren't for my current situation, I glance at her fist still posed to strike. This could be a lot more fun, I say quietly, looking her up and down before staring into those blue eyes as they widen. Her focus slips for a moment. Perfect. I grab her waist and flip us over. Now I'm on top of her, pinning her wrists into the dirt beside her head. She pants beneath me, glaring up into my face. She's covered in dirt, and I'm certain I look no different. A dark bruise is already beginning to blossom across her cheekbone, and blood leaks from her nose and mouth. Nicely done, Gray, I say close to her face. She squirms in my hold, but it does nothing to loosen my grip. I have a few critiques. She stills, and I watch as a slow smile spreads across her lips. Seeing that you're the future enforcer, I wasn't sure if you were capable of showing mercy. Clearly you are. I stare down at her, my face morphing into its cold mask at her words. Then she lifts her head off the ground, so only mere inches separate us as she breathes. I know you went easy on me. Was it that obvious, or did her psychic abilities tell her that? My gaze roams over her face, snagging on the dirt and blood splattering her skin, concealing the faint dusting of freckles I know covers her nose. And what makes you think that? Her face inches impossibly closer, lashes fluttering, lips quirked into a smile, and dangerously close to my own. Her voice is breathy, barely audible as she whispers, "Because if you weren't going easy on me, I wouldn't be able to do this." I barely have enough time to be confused before she headbutts me. When the crown of her head meets my nose, I see stars. She breaks my hold on her wrist, and uses both legs to push me off her. A cloud of dust surrounds me as I lie in the dirt, blinking away the throbbing pain. The hit was hard, but not hard enough to stop me from staggering to my feet and facing her, blood streaming from my broken nose. She doesn't waste a moment. Her arms are around my neck, her knee driving into my stomach again and again. Before I have time to react, she uses my bent leg as a step stool, throwing her own legs over my shoulder in one swift movement. Using her momentum and the limbs wrapped around me, she throws us both to the ground. I sprawl into the dirt while she rolls, wasting no time before pouncing on me. And then my arms are pinned under her knees once again. "How is my form, Prince?" she pants, lips bloody. "Any critiques now?" Her weight presses down on me and I huff out a laugh. "I have a few notes." "Likewise." Her hand flashes to her boot, sliding a thin blade from the worn leather. "For starters, I don't appreciate my opponents going easy on me." She gently drags the knife's tip across my cheekbone, tickling my skin. I smirk despite the blade she trails across my face, my gaze burning into hers. And then my eyes flick to the blood dribbling down her face, leaking from the several cuts and gashes I'd given her. "Looks like I messed up your pretty face after all, despite my best efforts." "Oh, this is nothing," she laughs breathlessly. "You should see the damage I did to your pretty face." My lips quirk into a smile as I lift my head towards hers. "Oh, darling, as long as you still think I'm pretty, I don't give a damn what I look like." Those blue eyes blink at me in shock before rolling at me in annoyance. With a huff, she shifts and stands to her feet. I follow, dusting the dirt from my body as she does the same. Before she can turn to leave, I say, "You're far more fun to spar with than Kit. We should do that again sometime." Her head tilts slightly to the side, her smile sly. "I'll never pass up the chance to kick your ass, Prince." And with that, she's striding away as I watch her retreating form. "Oh, and Kai?" she calls, her voice casual. And then I'm ducking. She spun, throwing the knife so suddenly that I barely had time to dodge before it sank into the wooden target a few feet behind me. "I don't want your mercy. Next time we fight," I can see her blue eyes smoldering from where I stand. "Impress me." A low whistle sounds from the crowd. Kit, of course. Ignoring him, I shake my head, grinning at her as she turns away from me. Vicious little thing indeed.
Chapter 18. Payden. I'm almost certain I'm not an ordinary. My power may actually be the ability to lie effortlessly. Lie about what I am, who I trust, and how happy I am to be here. Yes, the trials are a series of physical games, but they are just as deadly when it comes to the mental ones. I need to win over the people, convince them that I love these trials as much as they do. I want their votes to stay alive, but I need their votes if I want to win this bloody thing. I glance around the dinner table, taking in the stiff shoulders and clipped conversation. The tension in the room is nearly suffocating, choking us into awkward silence filled mostly with chewing. It's safe to say that we've become antsy as of late. So much so that a fight broke out between Ace and Braxton in the training yard, one that the former unsurprisingly initiated. I can't imagine what Ace must have done to crack Braxton's patient composure, but the brawl took 4 Imperials to break up, all but piling on top of the 2 contestants. My eyes slide over my opponent slowly, stopping on the green gaze already staring at me. I suck in a breath, steeling myself against the rush of rage I feel every time I look at the king. No, not the king. Kit stares back at me with eyes so like his father's that I have to blink the image of the king away, forcing myself to focus on the boy in front of me instead. His smile is warm, his eyes wandering over my face. I return the action, before quickly looking away, desperate to avoid his gaze, as my eyes crash into a familiar pair. I'm suddenly swallowed in the storm that is his steely gray gaze, framed by dark lashes. Kai tilts his head slightly, smiling at me in a way that has me spinning the ring on my thumb nervously. I hope he's losing his mind trying to puzzle me out like I am him. Kai's gaze flicks to my thumb and the ring I'm now spinning on it. There's a glint in his eyes when he leans across the table towards me.
Something making you nervous, Gray?
Plagues. How can one person be so equally infuriating and infatuating? And what would give you the impression that I'm nervous? He hums, running a hand over his rough jaw.
Should I start with the fact that you're spinning that ring, or the more obvious one being that you're clutching a knife?
I blink at him before looking down. There is, in fact, a steak knife gripped in my fist, though I'm not sure when it found its way there. I stare at it, huffing out a laugh before uncurling my fingers from the handle. When my gaze finally meets his, it's searching, softer than before. And annoyingly enough, I'm mirroring that same look he's giving me, though we are seeing very different things. I see a boy who is confusing and captivating, cocky and calculating. But with every new detail I discover about him, the less I think I know. He has a soft spot for only those he loves dearly. That much is clear. But he's built walls, guarded himself, slipped on masks, making him annoyingly difficult to decipher. My mind wanders to our fight, to the feel of his hands on me, steady and strong. Watching him fight is like watching a dancer, one who feels the music in their soul, their very bones. He was born for battle, raised to kill. And I need to remember that. I'm jolted from my thoughts when a servant reaches to grab my plate. Out of pure instinct, my fingers itch to snatch a roll or two before they are whisked away. I'm still not used to having regular, let alone nourishing meals every day, and I find myself constantly fighting my thieving instincts when they scream at me to grab whatever food I can get my hands on. Chairs scrape against the marble floor as those around me stand to leave. An airy, delicate voice calls out over the commotion, and we all stop to turn towards the sound. The Queen has her hands folded neatly in front of her, clasped over her pristine navy gown, shimmering in the setting sunlight. She smiles at us, and the twinkle in her eyes reminds me vaguely of Kai. Only a few more days until the first ball. Ladies, I trust you all have selected a gown, or you've spoken to your maids about having one prepared. I have most definitely done neither of those things yet. Oh, and don't forget to be practicing your dancing, the Queen adds with a smile. I trust you'll want to make a good impression on the people. Oh, I'll definitely make an impression. She dismisses us with a nod, and I head swiftly for the door, intending to slip back to my room and seek Ellie's counsel on my gown. Payden. My feet falter, slowing me to a stop. The warmth in that voice and the use of my name tell me it's not Kai behind me. No, it's his brother. I turn on my heel and watch Kit stroll towards me, his blonde hair messy and his smile charming. I swallow when he steps close to me, when he looks at me with those emerald eyes he shares with a murderer. Hey, he says warmly. Mind if I walk you to your room? Yes. Not at all, I hear myself say through the teeth I'm flashing at him. We start walking down the hall, heading for the contestants' wing of the castle. I have yet to congratulate you on your interview, he says with a pinch of pride in his voice. Didn't I say you'd do just fine? I think back to the interviews, when I managed to make a mess of the one thing I was expected to say. Survival. I expect to survive this. I almost laugh at the thought. Well, it's good to know that the future king won't have my head for screwing up his kingdom's motto. I bite my tongue, but it's too late to stop the words that have already tumbled from my mouth. He laughs. The sound is rich, flooding me with relief. He rubs a hand behind his neck, still chuckling as he says, Actually, that was my favorite part. I throw him a bemused look. Was it now? Yes. The laughter leaves his voice when he stops to look at me, halting us in the middle of the hallway. It was the most real thing anyone's ever said in those interviews. I search his face, trying to ignore the flash of his father I see. You mean it was the stupidest thing anyone's ever said in those interviews? His warm chuckle is echoing off the walls once again. Perhaps. He pauses, peering down at me. But if it makes you feel any better, I don't think you were wrong when you said you expected to survive this, and I admire you for voicing how you truly feel. I'm so shocked by the sincerity in his words that I huff out a laugh. Then you must admire me often, because I tend to speak my mind far more than I should. I do admire you often. His eyes seem to speak those 5 words as they search mine, voicing something he never intended to. And it's the first time that I can meet his gaze and not see the king gazing back at me. Clearing my throat, I turn and continue heading down the hallway again. Kit is by my side when we come to a halt in front of my room, and I'm already pushing open the door as I say, "Thank you for walking with me." I pause to give him a small smile over my shoulder. Now I can say I've been escorted by the future king. I'm stepping through the doorframe when words leave him in a rush. Yes, and if you'll let me, I'll do it again. I spin around, finding him suddenly right behind me. What? His face splits into a smile that seems almost too shy to be worn by a royal. Miss Grey, will you be my partner to the balls? I nearly choke on the next breath I suck in, and yet, instead of answering his question, a pointless one of my own falls from my lips with a breathy laugh. Since when have I been Miss Grey? A sly smile replaces his shy one, reminding me briefly of his brother. Since you started referring to me as the future king. And you don't like that? Me calling you the future king, that is? My curiosity forces the question from my mouth, since I assumed he was quite attached to the title and the power accompanying it. I'd rather not be called by a title I haven't earned or lived up to yet, he says simply. That's why I called you the future king. He smiles, content to let the silence stretch between us before he finally says, You never answered my question, Miss Grey. I hear the offer in his voice, see the silent question in those eyes I keep avoiding. Say yes to being his partner, and we will simply be Kit and Peyton. Say no, and the titles remain. Say yes, and I play the part. Say no, and I pass up the opportunity to please the people. The thought of hanging off the future king's arm and looking up at the similar face of my father's killer isn't personally pleasant, but it would be for the people of Ilia. I would undeniably have their attention, a terrifying yet tempting thought. A smile lifts my lips at the image of a former slummer and a future ruler hand in hand, the perfect picture of polar opposites. The most powerful man paired with the most powerless woman. It would be an honor to be your partner, Kit, I say softly, smiling slightly. Play the part. Kit chuckles, sounding relieved. I was hoping you would say that, Peyton. Ellie, help, please. I'm staring at my wardrobe, driving myself mad looking at all the colors and styles of gowns hanging inside. Which one should I wear for the ball? I need to make a good impression. Yes, you do. And you won't with one of those dresses. Ellie cuts me off, laughing softly. I tip my head back and groan. What's wrong with one of these? I gesture to the multiple dazzling dresses at my disposal. Those, she points at the wardrobe, are no ball gowns, though you'd certainly make an impression if you wore one of them. Just not a good one. So what now? I can't keep the irritation from bubbling out of me. Clearly, Ellie noticed because she says softly, We'll need to have a dress made for you, immediately. I know several excellent seamstresses who could fix you up a beautiful gown in no time. You'll just need to pick out the style and the shade of green. Apparently, It is common knowledge that the women tend to wear green gowns to these balls, seeing that emerald is Ilya's kingdom color. It isn't a set rule, but something everyone simply does. Typical. Tradition. Tiresome. Ellie carries on about the seamstresses she knows, how wonderful their work is. And then it hits me. I know a seamstress. Lived with one. I'm suddenly crushed by the weight of what I've done. No, what I haven't done. Adina. The promise I made to her rings in my head, a reminder of how I'd forgotten about her. I vowed to visit her, and yet only remembered to do so as soon as it was convenient for me. I'm gripped by guilt, nearly choking from its tight grasp around my throat. I swallow, silently cursing myself for my selfishness. But this wouldn't be the first time I've been selfish when it comes to Adina. I was selfish the night she found me on the roof of a shop 2 years ago, hurt and hysterical, and hoping for someone to just understand. The rain rolled down my face as I studied the stars, mingling with my tears and stinging the fresh cuts I'd received from an imperial that morning. Adina pulled herself over the edge of the roof before breathlessly telling me how she was certain she'd find me up there, just as she'd been certain to never again be scaling a shop. But her smile slipped when her eyes slid to me, shaking in the streaming rain, hugging my knees. I was tired. Tired of trying to be something I wasn't while no one knew what I was. So I decided to study the sky that night, spotting similarities between us. I was lonely in a way that I imagined the stars to be, observed by everyone, yet too far to truly be seen. And for once, I wanted to be seen by someone. It was selfish of me to tell Adina about my past, present, and everything in between. Just knowing about what I am puts her in danger, and yet we've only grown closer despite that. She believed me. She listened as the truth spilled from me in a sob, stayed with me even after knowing what I am. And I've never been more relieved about a moment of weakness. Ellie, I say slowly, deliberately. What if I know of a seamstress? She thinks for a moment before answering with a shrug. That would be fine. Did you meet someone here? In the palace? No. She's from Loot. Ellie gives me a skeptical look, but I barrel on. She's incredible. I can guarantee she would make me the finest dress Ilya's ever seen. Well, I suppose I could talk to Lenny about escorting you there to get her, she quickly adds, as long as he is allowed to. My brows knit together. Get her? Oh, yes. If you get the clearance to go, she'll come back with you and be hired as your personal seamstress until the trials are over. Or until... She trails off. The rest of her words are drowned out by the blood pounding in my ears, and my heart is racing so quickly I feel as though I'm in the middle of a fight. Adina is going to live here. With me. She'll be fed and paid. I'll get to see her. She'll be safe. Relief washes over me, feebly attempting to replace the guilt I still feel. Ellie promises she'll speak to Lenny about taking me to Loot before saying goodnight and slipping out the door. I flop onto my bed, staring up at the intricate molding on the ceiling. I'm not sure how long I lay there, letting the hope and happiness wash over me at the thought of seeing Adina safe and sound. And then, a light knock at the door has my thoughts shattering. Chapter 19. Payton. It must be nearly midnight, so who the plagues is that? I grip the handle of my dagger and slide it out from beneath my pillow, holding it loosely at my side as I pad across the floor. When I swing open the door, my eyes meet the pair of gray ones on the other side. Kai's gaze drops to the dagger in my hand, before returning to my face, lingering on my bruised cheekbone and split lip that he so generously gave me in our fight this morning. My pride wouldn't allow the healers to tend to my injuries, and, unsurprisingly, The prince seemed to have the same problem. Faint bruises have bloomed across his jaw, a reminder of each blow I landed.
Do you plan on pressing that to my throat again?
Kai's lips twitch upwards as he inclines his head towards the dagger clutched in my fist.
Don't tempt me,
I say, running my fingers across the smooth, flat edge of the blade.
Here for a rematch?
He shoves his hands into the pockets of his slim, dark pants before crossing his ankles and leaning against the doorframe.
Don't tempt me.
Ebony hair falls over his forehead, making his gray eyes pop against the inky waves. It's clear he hasn't shaved, leaving a shadow of stubble covering his sharp jaw, only emphasized by the darkening bruises I left there.
What do you want, Azur?
Missed you too, Gray, Kai says, casually picking something from his distractingly thin shirt. Then his gaze snaps to mine, his long lashes in total contrast with his light eyes.
I'm here for your lesson.
I scoff. I'm sorry, my what?
Your lesson.
He cocks his head to the side, amusingly puzzled.
You're psychic. Did you not sense this was coming?
That's not how it works, and you know it, I say, my tone a combination of irritation and confusion.
What are you talking? So, you were really going to go to the ball and step all over my brother's toes, then?
He huffs out a laugh.
You are just full of surprises, aren't you?
No, I wouldn't step all over his toes. Maybe trip over my own, but... I trail off, watching his grin grow. His dimple mocks me, tempting me to use the dagger waiting patiently in my palm. And then, his words finally sink in.
Dance lessons?
That is why you're here? I let out a breathy laugh, thinking he must be joking.
Took you long enough?
He pushes off the doorframe, taking a step closer.
Come on, we don't have all night.
Then he smirks.
Unless you want us to be out all night.
I don't budge. Nope, no way. I don't want or need your help. I give him a mocking smile. But it's good to know that you are always so eager to offer it. I grab the edge of my door and begin shutting it on him when he wedges a shiny shoe into my room. He easily pries the door open, his strong arms pushing it back despite my best efforts. With his hands still flat on the wood, he leans in close enough to murmur,
Just like always, you're too stubborn to admit that you need my help.
What I need is for you to get out of my room. I'm smiling at him, but it's all teeth. And yet, with every word that says otherwise, I know he's right. I know I should take him up on his offer and practice to prevent making a fool out of myself beside the future king. But I don't like that he can hold this over my head. Don't like that he would be helping me. Again.
What you need and what you want are two very different things.
The scent of pine washes over me when he ducks his head close to mine, forcing me to meet his gaze.
Come on, Gray. You're smarter than this. You know that you need to make a good impression at this ball. And next to my brother, there will be a lot more eyes on you than there already normally are.
It's like he read my thoughts, summed them up, and spit them back at me. I glare at him. I know he's right, and he knows it too. He must see the fight leave my eyes because a smile twists his lips.
Good to see you've come to your senses. Let's go then.
I brushed past his shoulder with my head held high. I chose to do this, not him, and he needs to remember that. Where are we going? I ask as he begins leading me down the hallway. At the end of it, we climb a wide spiral staircase draped in emerald velvet carpet. The shadow of a smile settles on his face.
Somewhere with enough room for you to fall all over the place.
When we reach the top of the stairs, I'm led down a wide hallway lined with paintings and pearly molding clinging to the walls and ceiling. My eyes sweep over the thin layer of dust covering the frames littering the wall. It has been a while since anyone's been up here. This floor happens to be one of the few that I haven't explored yet, seeing that I've crept out of my room multiple times in the dead of night to learn the layout of the castle and its possible exits. Call it my personality or paranoia, but being unaware of my surroundings scares me nearly as much as the trials. Since Lenny doesn't guard my door, I can't resist the urge to snoop. In fact, I don't see my Imperial much at all, and surprisingly, the thought sends a sudden jolt of sadness through me. I'm shocked by how much I genuinely enjoy his company, and even more shocked by the fact that I would think such things about an Imperial. An uneven rug catches my foot, sending the floor flying towards my face. I'm about to sprawl onto the spiral-patterned rug when an arm slides around my middle, firm and feeling annoyingly familiar. "There's that clumsy footwork we're trying to rid you of," Kai says, the smirk evident in his voice. He sets me on my feet, steadying me with a hand that I push away, flustered and feeling the need to put some space between us. He holds his hands up and takes a mocking step back before turning to head down the hall once again. As we continue walking, the question I've been waiting to ask finally slips past my lips. "Why are you doing this?" Kai halts in front of me. He turns slowly, looking almost amused by the question. "It's simple, really. You're attending this ball with my brother, and he needs to look the best he is able." I study his face, stare as a sliver of his mask cracks, displaying all the love and devotion for his brother, all the lengths he is willing to go to for him. It's as if he has a duty to fulfill, as if he is already the enforcer, and this is far bigger than just stopping me from stepping on his brother's toes. And then, his mask is suddenly back up, and I'm staring at that cool face once again, void of the emotion once there. When I can't think of a retort, I begin walking instead. We make a right down a smaller corridor and head to the very last door on the left. He grips the handle and swings it open, revealing a bedroom beyond, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the window. If I thought my room was magnificent, it pales in comparison to this. It's easily twice the size of my own, making it seem more like a house than a single bedroom. Though it's filled with a 4-poster bed, dresser, and a desk, just as mine is, this room seems lived in. The shelf is overflowing, books stacked at odd angles to make them fit. Several of their worn covers tell me they consist of strategy, combat, and poetry. Interesting. Everything filling the room is nicer than my own, yet used and worn. This is his room. His real room. The desk is covered in dark ink stains, and suits of armor are piled in the corner. My eyes scan over the large slices covering the posts of the bed, where chunks of dark wood are missing. Sword slashes. He's taken a blunt sword to the bedposts. Multiple times. I suppose that is better than taking a sword to a human, though I'm sure he does that as well. My eyes finally flick back to Kai. He's leaning against the doorframe, watching me curiously as I stand in the middle of his room, though I don't remember walking so far into it. I nod my head towards the chipped wooden posts of his massive bed, not knowing what to say under his stare. Interesting way to relieve stress. So is punching a pad till your fists bleed. He gives me a faint smile as he strolls across the room to his desk, hands in pockets, before he begins fiddling with the contraption on top of it. One that I recognize. Father had a record player. One with a wide golden horn I used to stick my head into as a child. He made decent money as the respected healer in the slums, but the record player was still the nicest thing we owned. Years ago, he used to plop my feet on top of his so we could dance around the kitchen. Well, he would dance. I was just along for the ride. But he never got the chance to truly teach me how to dance without literally stepping on anyone's feet. The crackling of the needle hitting a record is familiar, though the sound of the smooth waltz that follows is not. Kai turns around, casually unbuttoning half his shirt and sending my eyes searching for anything to stare at other than his tanned chest and swirling tattoo. And then he's suddenly before me, surveying me from head to toe with a slight smile that displays the deeper dimple on his right cheek. His stare is like a caress, and he takes his time. I refuse to squirm under that piercing gaze, knowing how he would love to watch me fidget. Not wanting to be outdone, I drag my eyes over his strong facial features and even stronger body beneath. Everything about him is lethal. That smile, those eyes, that cunning mind of his. Are you sure you'll be able to focus on dancing? Or will I be too much of a distraction, darling? His words startle me, and my eyes shoot back to his. I huff. I think I'll manage, thanks. He gives me a doubtful look. I guess we'll find out, won't we? I expect him to reach out and pull me into a dance, and the thought has my heart pounding, has me preparing to feel his hands on my body. But he doesn't move, doesn't try to close the distance between us. Good. For now, you will start by just learning the steps to the average waltz, he says, mostly because I don't want you stomping on my toes. With his hands still in his pockets, Kai steps in and out, side to side, showing me the basics. He's so graceful, so elegant, so natural. Fighting is also a dance to him. I feel stiff and suddenly so unsure of myself. Even with his hands still in his pockets, Kai easily steps in time with me, though he doesn't dare get close enough to be trampled by my clumsy footing. I sigh, irritated with myself and the smirking prince in front of me. Relax, Kai murmurs across from me, with more than a hint of humor in his voice. You're thinking too much. Don't calculate. Just move with the music. I look up to see him already staring at me with a grin. Also, you do know this is a dance, correct? So, no fighting stance is necessary. Only then do I notice how tight and poised my body is, hands slightly raised as though readying to strike. I straighten and run a hand through the strands of hair falling out of my loose braid. I'm oddly nervous, and it's maddeningly annoying. This would be a lot easier if he weren't staring at me. Another waltz ends, replaced by a slow, mellow tune. My head is lowered, pieces of hair falling into my face as I watch my feet step in time with the music. A pressure at my waist makes me jump. Like a reflex, my hand twitches towards the knife now sheathed under the folds of my dress, but a calloused hand catches my wrist. Knives are also not necessary for dancing, Kai says with a low laugh. Holding my gaze, his rough fingers slide slowly from my wrist to my palm before he folds his hand into mine, raising it into the air. But it's his other hand that holds my attention, the one that has settled comfortably against the small of my back, the one that is pulling me towards him. Through the thin fabric of the dress I threw on for dinner, I can feel the warmth of his palm seeping into my lower back. I stare at him as he pulls me close. It's not as if I didn't know this was bound to happen. I just wasn't expecting it so suddenly. He looks at me with an expectant expression, before chuckling softly and sliding his hand from my back, making me feel suddenly cold in its absence. He grabs my other hand and lifts it to his shoulder, dropping my palm atop his thin shirt. I can feel every muscle shift beneath it as he returns his hand to my back, firmly flattening it against my dress. Let's see what you learned, he says softly, as his feet begin moving in time with the music. I fumble to follow, managing to mirror my steps with his. He leads easily, confidently guiding me through the dance. My eyes sweep across the room and down at my feet, counting with each step. The pressure on my back is suddenly gone when fingers catch my chin, tipping my head up. You'll never learn if you keep watching your feet, Gray. Eyes on me. He smiles, returning his hand to my back. That shouldn't be too difficult. I roll my eyes at him, opening my mouth to make a remark only to ask a question instead. How did you know Kit asked me to the ball? Kai's laugh is humorless, hollow. I'm no psychic, but it wasn't hard to put the pieces together. When I only stare at him, he sighs and continues. I know my brother. And because of that, I knew he would ask you.
That was a terrible answer, I say simply.
And you're still a terrible dancer, so my work is far from finished. I snort. Oh, Kai adds casually. He may have also mentioned that he asked you.
Another laugh escapes me before I can stop it, and I press my lips together to smother the sound. My eyes fall to his chest that is far too close, reminding me that we are far too close for competitors, for enemies in these trials. And yet, here I am, dancing with him in his bedroom, alone, in the dark. If it's even possible, I'm suddenly more rigid than I was before. Kai feels me stiffen in his hold and leans impossibly closer.
You're stiff as a board, Gray. Loosen up.
Not helping. I try and fail to melt into his embrace like a dance partner should. I'm hopeless, hopelessly in over my head. But the prince doesn't give up so easily. No, he wraps his arm fully around my waist and tugs me to him. I drag my feet, not wanting to close the little distance left between us. A maddening dimple peeks out at me, barely visible in the dim light.
So, what have we learned today?
He asks, annoyingly amused as ever.
1, daggers are not needed for dancing, and 2, you actually have to be close to your partner during the dance. And shockingly, you seem to be struggling more with the latter.
Would you rather I struggle with the first and put a dagger to your throat? I pause. Again?
So very predictable,
he chuckles, the sound washing over me before he mutters,
always so vicious and eager to stab me.
He is very close to me. Too close to me. And it's because I'm so distracted by that fact that my foot lands on top of his, and I stumble forward to collide with his solid frame. Both of his hands wrap around my waist, steadying me before I regain my senses and push away from him. A deep laugh rumbles from his chest, paired with a genuine smile, one that I've only ever seen him wear around his brother. Lethal.
How can a fighter have such poor footwork? His eyes dance between mine. You are just full of surprises.
Well, surprise, I'm done with this lesson, I say flatly, turning out of his grasp. My back is to him when he snatches my wrist and whips me around, pulling me back.
But you still owe me one more dance.
His wavy hair tumbles over his brow, the look in his eyes practically begging me to play with him. Fine, I say, playing along. Another dance for the answer to a question. His eyebrows rise.
Is that a bribe, Gray?
Those are my terms. Take it or leave it, Prince. His only response is a low chuckle. He turns his head away from me, thinking before he finally meets my gaze. Slowly, he raises my hand back into the air and rests his other hand comfortably onto the small of my back once again.
Deal.
Another slow waltz begins, occupying me with the music and steps, drowning me in the dance. When I can't seem to ignore the feel of eyes watching me so intently, I finally meet his gaze.
All right. What is it you're dying to know? Kai asks, leading me through the dance.
I have no idea. He looks at me, through me, waiting for an answer. His gray eyes are like chips of ice, shards of glass. Like both, his gaze is pointed and piercing, cold yet captivating, beautiful in the way only deadly things can be. And just like that, I suddenly can't think of a single thing I want to ask him. I rack my brain for a question only to blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. Do you wish it was you? He blinks, dark lashes fluttering. Do you wish you were the future king of Ilia? The heir? It's not at all the question I thought I would be asking, but here we are.
No,
he says simply, holding my gaze. I raise my brows in a silent question. When he doesn't continue, I say, That's it? No?
You got your answer, and I got my dance. That was the deal, darling. I can barely breathe. Adina's thin arms are wrapped so tightly around my neck that I'm beginning to see spots. She screamed and squealed when she spotted me waiting by the fort. My best friend, my literal partner in crime, safe and sound, beautiful and bubbly as ever. Lenny arrived at my room early this morning, ready to take me into loot and retrieve my new seamstress. Apparently, he had gotten approval to do so, though I was too excited to bother asking for details. I may have even squealed myself. "I'm going to be your what?" Adina squeaks. I sigh, though it comes out sounding more like a laugh. "My personal seamstress." I filled her in on the details about 3 times now. "I mean, unless you don't want the job." "Are you crazy? Of course I want the job pay." She's practically skipping as we make our way to the coach waiting at the far end of loot. I survey the market and wide alley before me. My home looks just as dull and dreary as it did when I left it. I let the sound of curses and haggling, the scent of fish and spices wash over me. All familiar. All the same. Lenny opens the door of the coach, and both Adina and I settle in before we are rumbling up the uneven cobblestone street, heading for the palace. "I can't believe this is happening," Adina says, in awe as she looks out the tiny window. She turns back to me, taking in the casual dress Ellie forced me into with wide eyes. "I can't believe this." She looks from my face to the dress, before snatching up the hem of the skirt and inspecting it. "Don't get used to this," I gesture to the dress. I typically wear pants during the day, but Ellie insisted I wear a dress to make a good impression on the people who saw me at loot. And there certainly were a lot of people. Despite how early it was, the marketplace was teeming with men, women, and children, all gawking at me as I passed. I'm not sure what impression I made on them, but I certainly made one nonetheless. "It sounds like Ellie and I will get along perfectly," Adina says, her smile bright. "Oh, I'm sure you will," I laugh before continuing. "And you will be paid, fed, and have a real bed to sleep in at night. I'm told there is a sewing room where you will spend most of your time, filled with every type of fabric you could ever dream of." Adina's eyes go glossy at the thought. "Heaven. I'll be in heaven." I fill her in on everything. The training, the interviews, the contestants. She does the same, telling me of her time in loot while I've been gone. "I was beginning to think you forgot about me," Adina says with a laugh, dismissing the idea. "And now here you are, taking me back with you." A wave of guilt slams into me, threatening to drown. I swallow before opening my mouth to plead forgiveness, to tell her I'm sorry, I could never forget about you, A. Never again. She beams, while my heart beats wildly against my chest. She's so very good, and I am so very guilty. I'm weak for withholding the truth from her, but with each beat of my heart, I vow to never do it again. "Oh, wait! Who are you going to the ball with?" Adina's high-pitched question cuts through my confused thoughts. Of course Adina would know the details of the trials, how we all have to pair up for the balls. She loves this sort of stuff. I run a hand through my hair, combing it out of my face. "Well, I'm going with Kit." Adina blinks. And then she shrieks. "Kit? You mean the heir?" She's practically hyperventilating, fanning herself with her hands. "It's not a big deal, A, except that I do need to look good," I say, trying to calm her down. "Well then, you came to the right girl," she says confidently. "Wow, okay, you have to look really good then." She swipes at the curly bangs falling into her eyes. "Well, there are several beautiful shades of green we could choose from. We could put you in emerald or a sage." I hold a hand up, a smile curving my lips. "Actually, I have a different color in mind."
Chapter 20. Kai. I'm standing in a sea of black suit coats, black ties, black shoes. Like ink, the men filling the ballroom swirl around on the white marble floors, words hastily scribbled on a piece of glossy parchment. Servants dance around the room, though they have no music to accompany them as they weave through the crowd. They make their laps, bringing wine, champagne, and extravagant finger foods on even more extravagant plates. Seeing that the trials are different this year, thanks to me and the testing of the future enforcer, it's no surprise that the balls would be out of the ordinary as well. Typically, the trials' balls are just that, balls. They consist of far too many hours of dancing and tedious small talk, both of which require excessive amounts of alcohol to get through. But this trial's first ball begins with a banquet. Black-clad bodies dot the room, men of all ages milling about. That is, men of all ages who are either nobility, of royal blood, or have somehow managed to get an invite to the purging trial's first ball. After an hour of hopping between throngs of men, making idle conversations with both young and old, friend and foe, I'm restless and bored at best. Kit and I have retired to reside by one of the many beautiful tables bordering the ballroom, brimming with drinks. I've passed the time by admiring my favorite room of the castle, taking it in for the 100th time. Its marble columns and large floor-to-ceiling windows line the room, giving it an ethereal look. Chandeliers droop from the ceiling, dripping with diamonds and elegance. 2 sets of emerald padded staircases mirror each other as they descend to the marble floor from the balcony high above. Golden, detailed doors open onto the half-circle platform overlooking the ballroom floor, which is so shiny I can see my own bored reflection in it. I sip at my second glass of wine, wishing I had something stronger. Any minute now. The small orchestra seated in the far corner of the elegant ballroom strums to life just as the glistening doors at the top of the balcony swing open. A beautiful woman, cocooned in silky emerald, steps up to the railing and looks down at the floor beneath her. Mother. She beams, practically glowing. Then she begins gracefully descending the staircase to her right with measured, light steps. Sometimes I forget that even she is a fighter, with her volt ability to manipulate electricity that can easily be used in deadly ways if she wished. The click of her heels sounds against the marble floor as she makes her way across the ballroom. The men part, creating a path for her as she heads for my father, seated at the far end of the room. He smiles, really smiles at her. It's a rare expression for him, one that he only seems to wear when she is around. He stands, meeting her in the middle of the room before taking her arm. The king looks around, eyeing the men eyeing him. Let the first ball of the purging trials begin. The men cheer as the king and queen walk together, talking and welcoming those they pass. And so it begins. Women, both young and old, begin filing through those golden doors, one at a time. As is tradition, the men always enter the ballroom first and wait for the women to arrive, in honor of the queen who appeared fashionably late to the ball where she first met father. Every eye on her as she made her entrance. Since then, every woman has been given the opportunity to make their arrival for all to watch and admire. Dozens of them descend the staircase, all varying in different shades of green. As soon as they reach the floor, their dates whisk them away and take a seat at one of the many tables that litter the far side of the ballroom. Kit and I watch the parade of women as we sip our wine, admiring from a distance. They come in no particular order, no ranking or status involved in who gets to walk through the door next. I watch as my cousin sweeps in, wearing a mint green dress that contrasts her wine-red hair. Andy smiles at Jax from where he waits for her at the bottom of the stairs, a goofy grin on his face. She pulls him towards the large table meant for the contestants, centered among the others to allow the guest a perfect view of us, a dinner and show. I watch them take a seat before turning my attention back to the balcony, finding the steady stream of women beginning to slow. I spot Hera and Ace making their way through the crowd, neither of them looking particularly happy to be paired with one another. My eyes dart back up to the doors when Sadie enters, her brown skin glistening against her light green dress as she walks down the steps to an awaiting Braxton. A shade of lilac catches my eye, revealing Blair standing at the top of the stairs, peering down from the railing. Forest green fabric hugs her waist, her figure, before billowing out at her feet. Her hair is pinned and twisted out of her face, a sly grin already spreading across it when she spots me. "Good luck, brother," Kit mutters, and I don't miss the amusement in his tone. After being cornered before dinner a few nights ago, Blair insisted we go to the ball together, and seeing that I didn't have a choice in the matter, a reluctant yes was the only answer I could give. I shoved my wine glass into Kit's hand with an annoyed sigh. "Take care of that." I nod down to the cup he now clutches. "I'll definitely be needing it." Kit's deep laugh follows me as I make my way to the bottom of the stairs, meeting Blair there just in time. I hold out an arm to her, which she clutches greedily. "You look stunning, Blair," I say softly, because she does, in a cold and sharp sort of way.
"Why, thank you, Kai,"
she muses, her darkened lashes lowering as she takes in my attire, my hair, my face.
"As do you."
I lead us to the table, now mostly filled with the contestants sitting stiffly around it. When I take the seat beside Jack's, he shoots me that bright smile of his that never fails to make me return it. "Look at you, Jay. You cleaned up nice," I say, surveying his crisp suit and dark pants that are actually long enough to cover his ankles for once. "You can't even tell I whooped your ass in the ring this morning." I hear Andy snort on the other side of Jax before she leans in to add,
"You're not the only one."
Jax rolls his eyes at our teasing, but the grin never leaves his face.
"Where's Kit? He's the only one of you who's nice to me."
Andy presses a hand to her chest, feigning offense while I don't even bother trying to deny that he's right. Instead, I simply say, "True, but you know I'm far more fun." Jax opens his mouth to respond, but it's a cold female voice I hear instead.
"Are you? Because I'm bored."
I slowly turn to face Blair, having forgotten she was even there. I'm a terrible date, though I suppose she signed up for this when she asked me to be her partner, so I don't waste my time feeling bad about it. "So sorry I'm not entertaining you, Blair." I hear Andy snort before I add, "How are you this evening?" She smiles, seemingly pleased that I'm providing her my undivided attention, and that is all she needs to begin complaining about the uncomfortable pins in her hair before going on to discuss the material of her gown, insisting I should feel how soft it is. Jack snickers beside me through it all, unable to stifle his laugh each time I hum in agreement or nod my head at words I'm not entirely listening to. But I'm snapped out of my bored daze when a goblet is set before me. "Thought you might want that back, brother." I turn my head to find Kit, standing beside my chair, before my eyes slide to her, shimmering beside him. She is every bit the silver savior. Shining, silver fabric clings to her body. Thin straps wrap around her shoulders, holding up the dress with its plunging neckline, revealing her tanned skin and sharp collarbones. It melds to her waist and hips like melted coins, reminding me of the one she stole when we first met. Peyton's kohl-lined lashes sweep over me as I take her in. Her hair is like a curtain covering her dress, making it difficult to tell where the silver strands end and the shiny dress begins. Fabric fans out around her ankles, displaying a large slit sliding up the length of her leg, mirroring the one I tore in her dress that day of the interviews. And there, strapped to her thigh, a silver dagger for all to see. I fight my smile at the sight of her deadly weapon, paired with her dazzling attire. So lovely, yet so lethal. Every bit of her is draped in silver. Not green, not expected. Beautiful, bold, not blending in. A statement, a reminder of who she is and what she did. The women aren't necessarily required to wear green to these balls, and it seems Peyton took advantage of that little detail. Her eyes briefly meet mine before Kit leads her to the other side of the table. And that's all it takes to have me downing my own drink and desperately wishing this night was over. My eyes flick up, meeting Payton's across the table where she's now sitting. She holds my gaze, only breaking it when Kit says something softly beside her. Turning